Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. All right, time for Sharper Square. Chad Millman, CCO Action Network, all odds provided by DraftKings. So I was a Will Levis bonehead play from going 2-2-1, so I was overjoyed. I actually thought, I was wrong on the Carolina side, but other than that, I felt pretty good about it. I could go in an order of importance, but I was thinking about this. I am above going in order. I just give you my plays and you dissect them. So let's just start with a team that is this close to beating Kansas City at Arrowhead, and I think the Chiefs are a better version of last year's Super Bowl champ, Baltimore. I think the Raiders are bad, and I don't think they're terribly well coached. The fact that the only way they'll win is physicality, and the Chargers were more physical. They beat them at their only game. I think Baltimore's really good. I don't think Lamar will run 16 times on average. I think Kansas City brings that out of him. It's a huge number. I hate doing that. I think Baltimore's pissed. I'm going to swallow the 8.5, Sharper Square.
So it's square, but you're not going to find a ton of guys who, when they're doing this, are excited about betting the Raiders. You mentioned Carolina, right? I was on Carolina last week too. The wise guys will be on Carolina again this week as 6.5 point underdogs. In the same way, they're going to be on the Raiders, which started at 9.5, got up to 10, and then was bet down to 9.5, then 9, and now 8.5. So it's getting closer to a number that I think at some point the wise guys will come back in on Baltimore. But at this big of a number, they're just betting the number. And this early in the season, everything tells you that you are playing against the overreaction, right? Everyone saw the same thing you did. The Ravens come within a toenail of tying the Chiefs at Arrowhead in a massive game against a Chiefs team that looks like it can break every rule of betting that exists in the universe, right?
Right.
The Raiders, people were high on, they got crushed, and they didn't look very good doing it, and Antonio Pierce made terrible, terrible decisions. I read in The Athletic that decision he made on fourth down in his own territory, it was the first time a coach had been down and in his own territory in the fourth quarter and punted in 8 years. It's one of the most cowardly calls that has been made in the past 8 years. And you could see him on camera. There's videos of him saying, should I be going for this right now? So there's a sentiment that people are overreacting to the bad coaching, the bad play, and the great play by the Ravens. So yes, the wise guys are going to be on the Raiders.
So let me take an underdog. Minnesota at home against the 49ers. San Francisco on a short week played virtually a perfect football game. Even when you're as good as the Niners, that's very hard to do back-to-back. Purdy always feels like he's better at home. Minnesota will negate some of the pass rush because they're great at left tackle. They're also good at running back, tight end, wide receiver, and they can bring a little heat. I think Minnesota is actually, I said this before the season, if they finish fourth, they will be the greatest fourth-place team in the history of the league. They've got a lot of good players. They have a brilliant coach. Really, really sharp guy. He reminds me of Kevin Stefanski before he started winning Coach of the Year. He's got operating at a different level. This was at 6 at one point, I think. I take the Vikings 5.5, Sharper Square.
Wise guys are taking the Vikings at 5.5. They took them at 6. They still like the Vikings. I got to tell you, I was leaning Niners in this game, and part of it is Kyle Shanahan is so good. You and I have talked about this. Like, he does not get concerned when he's missing pieces. It actually, I think, inspires him to be more creative. And he's also been very good on short weeks on the road. 8-2 during his career. One of the 4 best coaches the past 5 years on short weeks when he's a favorite on the road. That said, I think Kevin O'Connell is starting to get a lot more credit as a coach than people wanted to give him. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was Brian Daboll and Kevin O'Connell. They were neck and neck for Rookie of the Year coaching. They both had teams that were excellent in one-score games. They played each other in the playoffs. The Giants win in Minnesota. Brian Daboll wins Coach of the Year. He's getting more credit as the best coach, right? And Kevin O'Connell had a similar year, and then last year did wonders when Kirk Cousins went down, and Brian Daboll's team is cratering when their top quarterback goes down. Then we see what happens last week, a bad quarterback for the Giants, a historically bad quarterback in Sam Darnold. And he has a Cinderella-like first half. 10 for 10 on his first 10 passes with a touchdown, a 99-yard touchdown drive that ends with a fourth down pass, like touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson. Kevin O'Connell is a very good coach, and I think that's another reason why the wise guys are in the Vikings.
So there's two things that I look at with the Jets and the Titans. When you play a standalone game and the feeling is you're humiliated physically, like the Jets were pushed around the field, 8 straight scoring drives by San Francisco. That is so embarrassing for Robert Saleh. That was an embarrassing physical performance. Now they go to potentially one of the worst offenses in the league. For a quarterback, I don't think can play. I don't think Will Levis can play. I don't think he's fluid enough. I think his judgment's bad. This is what I saw in the SEC. That's the first part. The second part is San Francisco makes everybody, so does Andy Reid and McVay. They make a lot of people look bad in week 1. I think the Jets are actually a pretty good football team. When this number got up to 4, now I sound like such a square on this, but 4 is an interesting number. Here's how I view 4. I like favorites at 4 because the market doesn't want to create 4s. They'd rather you be 3 to 3.5. When the market has to go to 4, they're signaling, okay, this is just a better team. This started at 4. The Jets are a better team. They're pissed. I don't think Will Levis can play. Home field's never met anything in Nashville. I know it's square. I take the Jets minus 3.5.
Well, the wise guys like the Titans. And they're kind of holding their nose here. There's a couple things in play, and that number 4 is really important, and I'm glad you bring it up. And we'll do that in the last part of my soliloquy here. The Jets were physically dominated.
Totally.
Not just that, their defense, which is supposed to be their strength, as you noted, 8 straight scoring drives, their defensive line was destroyed by Shanahan's blocking scheme and their run scheme, and they could not get to Purdy, who's just incredibly nifty in the pocket. Bill Callahan showed last week that he can do something really interesting with this Titans offensive line from a running perspective. You know, Bill Callahan, who is Brian Callahan's father, legendary offensive line coach, left the Browns this past season to go work with his son, revamp the Titans offensive line. The Titans defense did not give up a touchdown to the Bears, right? Like the Bears were scoring on special teams and they were scoring on defense because Will Levis, as you said, is a terrible quarterback. The wise guys are betting the number here. The 4 is key. Teams that open at 4 or higher at home in weeks 1 and 2, 60% against the spread the last 20 years. Teams that open at 4 or higher at home after losing their last game against the spread, which the Titans did, 64% since 2020. One more stat that is very interesting. The Jets were dominated on Monday night. They now have a defense that was on the field for a ton of plays, going back short week to be against another really physical team. That's what the Titans want to be. Teams with fewer than 25 minutes of possession in week 1, 6-25 against the spread in week 2. That's 19%.
Wow.
That's the Jets. So look, I'm with you. Like, this isn't going to be one of my 5 best plays because I don't trust Will Levis. And it's becoming clear in this league. There's such a delta between competent quarterbacking and really good quarterbacking and not. It's becoming too much of a hindrance for teams where, despite all these numbers that go back, you're going to have to play the quarterback in some situations. And this, to me, is a scary spot. The wise guys aren't scared. They bet the Titans. I'm a little scared.
I'm going to take Denver plus 2.5 against the Steelers, and here's why.
Thank God.
I thought it was a really tough spot for Bo Nix in the opener. Loud stadium. You don't really know the defense. You have to go watch Baltimore, Mike McDonald. Also, Seattle's got elite corners, and you're a rookie. They asked him to throw 42 times. He had one terrible pick. He's more mobile than anybody thinks. And I had another ex-player who I respect tell me this week, he's going to be the best rookie quarterback. He may not be the best year 2, 3, 4. He's going to have the best year. The rest of them have defensive coaches. I think Denver wins here. They've always been good at home. I think it's a coaching mismatch. I think Peyton's a brilliant coach. I like the Steelers as dogs, not as favorites. Denver plus the point, sharp or square.
100% ding, 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 ding. Wise guys love the Broncos here. Probably going to take a little piece of the Broncos on the money line as well. Great spot for Bo Nix. I think the wise guys, they love Seattle. They're really impressed with Seattle's
Yeah,
defense. They
so
love
do
Mike
I.
McDonald and what he can do
Fast.
with that team. And I think the wise guys were also really impressed with how much better the Broncos played this last week as a team versus what they looked like a year ago. And defensively, true. But I think they were excited about Bo Nix. And if you watch the game back, and we heard this on the favorites from scouts and from professionals who all watch a lot of film, Bo Nix recognizes he missed some easy throws. And that's because he was still getting to know the pace of the game.
Yeah.
They liked the way he was a gamer. They liked the way the Broncos stayed in that game. They basically made the game a push. They backdoor pushed in that game. Seattle was a 6-point favorite. So there's a lot of sentiment that this is the right side. The line moved from 3 to 2.5. And I will say, you said it about Tomlin. Tomlin is the greatest underdog coach possibly in the history of the game, the past 20 years, for sure. Not just great as an underdog winning outright. He is just as bad when he is a favorite. 41, 28-1 against the spread as a road dog in his career, 32, 40-2 as a road favorite. So it's almost completely flipped, right? And when he opens as a favorite of 3 or more on the road, 38% against the spread. So I would say you're on the right side. Also, we've talked about this on the show. We do this thing called the luck rankings at action that sort of takes the noise out of all the games and tells you what the expected score would have been based on the stats. And if you didn't have the flukiness and things like that, which there's always regression when there's flukiness. Broncos are one of the 3 games that has the highest sort of delta between lucky and unlucky in the Steelers and the Broncos. So we like the Broncos here.
I'll give you another underdog I like, Falcons plus 6.5. I worry about Kirk Cousins' immobility, but I thought Atlanta was at a big coaching disadvantage when they faced the Steelers because Arthur Smith knew their entire roster. And it was Kirk Cousins' first game back off an injury. He was very hesitant, a little like if you looked at Aaron Rodgers' passing stats in the first game. He had 21 passes, 19 to the left. He was not going to throw blind behind him. He wanted to see the left side of the field. He didn't want to get hit from behind. And Aaron's great. But that first game back off the accident, they're all hesitant. Kirk was hesitant. Philadelphia's defense is not good. They spend money on it. They drafted it. They were giving up 7 yards of play to Green Bay. And Green Bay's good, but young. Atlanta's got players. I think they play really well. I know Kirk in big standalone games isn't great. 6.5's a ton. I would take Atlanta here, sharp or square.
Totally sharp. Wise guys like the Falcons here. I'm a little hesitant personally. Haven't really laid into this game yet, but there's a lot of factors that go in the direction of what you're talking about. I think the biggest concern anybody has, it wasn't just that Kirk Cousins was hesitant. There were throws where it looked like he didn't want to plant off his injured Achilles. And so he was short hopping throws that looked like he was throwing off of one leg, right? So I think that was the bigger concern. And maybe after a full game, he's a little more comfortable. I think that what's interesting here is to the Falcons' advantage, their interior line, especially at center and right guard, those are 2 of the best players at their positions in the NFL. The strength of the Eagles is their interior pressure, not their edges. The strength of the Steelers was their edges. So just sort of, it's not really intuitive, but the way the Falcons play, it might mitigate the Eagles' greatest advantage defensively. So a lot of wise guys are on the Falcons here.
I'm going to take one more underdog, Giants plus 1.5 at the Commanders. Daniel Jones is this is a vomit game that nobody wants to watch. But I do think Brian Daboll's a really good coach. And I thought they were bad in the first series. Washington was just outplayed by a better quarterback and a better team. The Giants were awful. It looked like they hadn't practiced. They've actually had Daniel Jones is 5-1-1 against Washington. When he faces a team that's his equal, he can compete. There's no way I'm giving any, I'm taking any points I get in this game. Giants plus 1.5, mostly unwatchable, sharp or square.
Totally sharp. It is the corner TV game of the week, Colin. Yeah. It is the game nobody wants to watch unless you are betting it. The wise guys will be on the Giants mainly for the reasons you just said. Dayball has basically done incredibly well against the Commanders. Daniel Jones has done well against the Commanders. There's always going to be overreaction in week two. And obviously the wise guys or the fans are overjoyed with what they saw from Jaden Daniels, right? His rookie of the year odds for offense shrank. People were piling in on him for rookie of the year because of how he played and he was dynamic and he made decent enough throws, but also the running ability. That is not a recipe that they can sustain. And it also leads to overreaction in the market. So the bookmakers shaded the number a little bit. And really, this game should be closer to pick. So you're getting about a point and a half of value because people are so against the Giants and they loved what they saw from the Commanders.
Here's a favorite I like. Sometimes I feel that you can get ahead of the market for about a week to two. Then it happens more in college because there's so many games on TV. It's harder for bookmakers. Sometimes you just, if you're a regional bettor and you follow the Pac-12, I can remember years ago getting on an Oregon State team, and I knew their personnel really well, and I watched their games and had a good friend up there. And it happens sometimes. It doesn't happen a lot in the pros. I'm not so sure. We're not 3 or 4 weeks away from saying CJ Stroud's the third best quarterback in the league. I think he's insane. I mean, Greg Cosell on my show is like, he's making throws that almost nobody on the planet can make, like Stafford, Burrow, Mahomes.
Yes.
I think I had somebody that was at Friday's Bears practice before the game saying the ball was on the ground more than they'd ever seen it. Caleb is really struggling. Roma Dunze may not play. Keenan Allen may not play. I think CJ Stroud is really something. I mean, he is. That second game he played, I think it was Baltimore, in his career. It's like, wait a minute, this is Baltimore. What is he doing? I think this could be ugly. I think the Texans are going to win. I thought it would. When I guessed the line on this, I thought it would be closer to 6.5, 7.5. It's 6. I think I'd take the Texans, sharp or square.
So look, it's a little bit square. The reason it's at 6 is because it opened at 6.5, and the wise guys definitely felt that was inflated for exactly the reasons you just said. Obviously, we've talked about this. I'm from Chicago. I love the Bears. I will have a text chain on Sundays with all my guys from Chicago. I can't even respond because they come in so fast, and I'm so anxious about all the other bets we're making. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody, right? 45 texts in the first half of that Bears game. We thought the Bears had already broken Caleb Williams. Like, he was pushing the ball. He wasn't throwing the ball. He was looking at his first read and then taking off. He was inaccurate. He was throwing too early on deep passes because he already realized, oh my God, my offensive line is crap and I can't outrun these defensive linemen. So we already looked like it was over, right? Like we've seen it as Bears fans 1,000 times. Obviously, we know that's not the case. But you couple that and how bad he looked and the fact the Bears needed special teams and defense to beat the Titans with how good CJ Stroud looked. He made a throw on a third down.
Oh, yeah.
Rolling right across his body, middle of the field, third and 19. Got it. It's the kind of throw you can only make if you are an otherworld talent. We had what? Third and 11, third and 12 to seal the game. And he hit Nico Collins on a dart where Nico Collins caught it with an inch of space before the sideline, got a knee down. That ends the game, right? Like CJ Stroud is something special, but that's why the line was too high. So at 6, it's about where it's supposed to be. You're not getting much of an advantage. Might even be a little bit high still. At 6.5, the wise guys like it. So you're playing a bad number.
Okay. A game every week. I want you to teach me and the audience a lesson. I don't get the number. So the Lions go to overtime. That's not good. Generally, I stay away from teams that go to overtime, 7, 10 more plays. The Lions, clearly, Baker played his best game as a pro. This line is 7.5. I still think without Puka Nacua and 3 backup offensive linemen, the Rams moved the ball up and down the field in the second half, did everything they wanted to do. Blake Corum didn't even play. Tyler Higbee, their tight end, is out. It was just Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, and McVay and backups. And they move up and down the field. Baker's got legitimate receivers. I don't understand the number. to me, I'd be 4. Why? Explain how Detroit's a 7.5. What's the side here?
Well, look, the Lions, according to a lot of power ratings, should be bigger favorites. Like, I love the Lions in this spot. And that is a massive number to bet. It is a
A
massive
confident quarterback in Baker.
It is. Well, here's the thing. I think that there's a couple things going on. Number one, on the Bucs side, they are getting overvalued because Baker was so good in that opening game, right? But you were great against a rebuilding team, and the expectations for the Bucs for a lot of people were kind of low. And from a public point of view, they've now exceeded them, and Baker looked unbeatable. But he played against a team with a defensive line that is basically starting from scratch against a defense that doesn't have great defensive backs. So he could kind of have his way. The Rams are like, their game plan, which they had 5 months to build coming off a playoff game, they were so tuned in, and they were still losing 17-3. And they needed a couple penalties to get themselves back in a position. And yes, they were moving the ball up and down the field because their offensive line was terrible, but it was really passing the ball. And what they did, the Rams, was brilliant. Matthew Stafford, one-step drop, first read, throw. Aiden Hutchinson was in his grill every single play, even when Matthew Stafford was throwing it after about a second and a half, right? Baker is not that kind of player. Baker is not as sort of efficient with when he drops back and getting to his first receiver. And I think the Lions, and we saw this in the overtime, they are so physically dominant. They're playing at home. Dan Campbell is the best coach against the spread the past 5 years. Jared Goff, 26-9 against the spread indoors. Like, this is a really good team. I think this is the second best roster in the NFC. You could argue the Niners are the best. The Lions showed something. They're a physically dominant team. It is not about the edges. It is not about Dan Campbell and sort of going for it. Their offensive defensive line are fierce. So I like the Lions here. I think they are going to blow this team away.
Okay. I always ask you for a game I missed, a game you feel strongly about. It's often an unwatchable, egregiously bad television product, but I already gave you that with the Giants in Washington. So what say you?
Well, look, I do like another favorite. It's a little chalky for me, but I
Okay.
do like the Cowboys against the Saints. I think, Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, they are juggernauts during the regular season. They are juggernauts as big favorites at home. I am not a fan of the Saints. I think they played a bad Carolina team and got in the exact right position. But Dak is a favorite at home, 15-9 against the spread
Yeah,
in the
he's a good home fave. Yeah.
past 3 years as a favorite of 6 or more in his career. 31-13-1. That's
Wow.
71%, right? Like, he's just great in this spot. And so I am on the side of the Cowboys here. I think anything under 7, you're getting a good number. Here's the game that a lot of wise guys have been talking about and has had one of the biggest moves, and it makes me sick to my stomach, but we're going to bet it. Green Bay Packers.
Oh,
I know.
what if Malik Willis plays?
I know. I know. I don't know what to tell you, but like,
Ugh.
that's the game everybody is talking about. Look, this game was at 3.5. It went down to 3. Now there's some places where it's 2.5. That is not the squares coming in and betting on the Packers. That is the wise guys coming in. And like, I think there's a couple things. One, this swing, the Packers were in the what's called the look ahead line. So the
Yeah.
line that was set before last week's games, the Packers were 4.5-point favorites. With Malik Willis, they opened as 3.5-point underdogs. That's an 8-point swing. Patrick Mahomes is worth 8 points against the point spread. And the way the wise guys figure this out is they take how much better is he than his backup. It's not just about what would the line be if he's not playing. It's what would the line be if his backup is playing, right? So Jordan Love, as good as he is not an 8-point swing kind of generator when it comes to quarterback play. So they think there was a little bit of inflation in the way that they reopened the line from 3.5, which is why it got bet down. But also there are some on the field elements here. Number one, Malik Willis, if he knows anybody, it's the Colts, right? For the past couple of years, he's had to prepare for the Colts. Backup quarterbacks, when they are playing in their first game, 57% against the spread the past 3 seasons. There is some sort of overreaction in the market that offers a little bit of value. And then just look on the field, like the Colts defensive secondary is in trouble. They were not great this past week against the Texans. They're banged up. I mentioned the Jets and their 25 points or 25 minutes of possession. The other team that this applies to from the past week, the Indianapolis Colts. So that's another factor to look at. Matt LaFleur, I just said Dan Campbell, best coach past 5 years against the spread. Matt LaFleur, second best spread against the spread. So a lot of indicators here that are leading people to bet the Packers. It's a hold your nose, bet the number kind of thing. If you can get the 3, I wouldn't say take it at 2.5.
Chad Millman, CCO Action Network, all odds provided by DraftKings. He's in Oxford, Mississippi now, celebrating a friend's new book, right, Thompson? So it's supposed to be a bourbon town. That's what I'm not a bourbon drinker. It's supposed to be a bourbon town. Can you validate that or verify that?
I can validate that. I did have a bunch of bourbons last night. I'll tell you a funny story. I got back to my hotel. A bunch of us were at Wright's house hanging out. And, you've interviewed Wright. He is the quintessential Southern personality, great voice, drips accent, and he is a Mississippian and he's got this town wired. And so we're hanging out at his house and starts with barbecue dinner and then it's a few drinks and then it's a few more drinks. And then it's like after midnight and we're still sitting in the same place and it's beautiful outside and we're sipping on bourbons and I get back to my hotel. And you know how in hotels, there's 8 different lights and 8 different light switches. You're not used to the layout, right? Maddening. And so when I take out my contacts, I'm legally blind. I can't see anything. I need to feel the room.
Yeah.
And I realized I took out my contacts and I hadn't turned off all the lights. So I had to get nose to the wall to find the light switches. Found the light switch for the hallway, found the light switch for the light behind the TV, found the light switch for the bathroom. Felt around and got to the desk lights, the side table lights by the bed. Could not find the light switch for the overhead light. I'm in the wall, cannot find it. I go back to all the other light switches. I'm putting them up and down, cannot find it. I had to do the most embarrassing thing. I called the front desk. I'm like, I know Oxford's a crazy town. I promise you, I'm not so far gone. I'm going to forget this in the morning. I cannot find the light switch for my overhead light. And he goes, okay, what do you want me to do? I'm like, do you have any idea where the light switches are in my room? And he goes, what room are you in? I go 325. He goes, all right, let me think about it. He goes, no, and I don't have anything down here that maps it. I was about to say to him, again, it's after midnight. There's only one guy in the desk. He can't leave, but I was about to say to him, any chance you can come up to my room and check out where the lights are? And then as I was about to say it, I'm like, that's the most sketchy thing that you could possibly say after midnight to a guy working the front desk. I said, you know what? I'll figure it out. I put the phone down and I say to myself, I'm like, I'm just going to have to sleep with the light on. I don't know what else to do. And then I gave myself a Newt Rockney. I'm like, Millman, you're going to find this light switch. You can find this light switch. Again, I'm hands on the wall, feeling it around. Finally, I get to the thermostat. It is directly next to the thermostat. It looks like the thermostat. Found the light switch, turned it off, felt full relief, tripped on my way to the bed because I couldn't see anything anymore. But I did find that light switch and I didn't insult anybody on the way. And that's what's important.
If that would have been a woman at the front desk, that's a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Come up to my room, could you?
By the way, bourbon's great. Clearly, it's so good, I cannot find the light switch.
All right. I'm going to bounce back. Good seeing you, buddy.
It's good seeing you too, brother. I'll see you later.
All right.